Hey everybody, my name is Charlotte and I live in Italy. It's no secret that we Italians have passion and love affairs running through our blood. But before I tell you the story of my broken heart, subscribe to the channel and be sure to leave a like. Today I especially need your support. All done? Then let me begin. A small resort town of Portofino, where I grew up, is a contrasting place. Two realities perfectly coexist here. In one of them, rich people come to relax and blow their money, and another reality, mere mortals, like my mom and dad, work tirelessly to make ends meet and cater to the wealthy tourists. When I was born, my parents started saving money for my education so that I could go to a prestigious private school and make my way in life. They tried very hard and did everything in their power to get me out of poverty in which I was born. They wanted a better life for me than the one they had had. Charlotte, your life is in your hands. We're giving you a chance to achieve something more and make a career. Your mother and I have never had that chance. You should appreciate it and use all the opportunities to the maximum, Dad used to say patronizingly to me. Perhaps it was their dream to give me a decent education that indirectly led to the love drama that will be discussed in my story. And if I went to another school, nothing like this would have happened to me. I won't beat around the bush anymore and introduce you to the person who caused my heartbreak, Mr. Pellegrini, a new English teacher who started teaching at our school when I entered the 10th grade. Why do you think I speak such fluent English without an accent, although I've lived my whole life in Portofino? Yes, precisely because the very first day I tried so hard to please the new teacher that I dived into his subject headfirst and was grinding at it every night. Sometimes I even gave up on other homework just to be the best and shine on Mr. Pellegrini's lesson. The new teacher was very young and very handsome. He was working on his dissertation and had just graduated from university, but was already an experienced teacher. God, you should have seen what a cutie he was. I bet you would also be crushing hard. His way of tying his scarf and getting along with other people made him look like a British aristocrat. Imagine how much he activated the girls in our school. They whispered and giggled stupidly as Mr. Pellegrini passed by. For some reason, the teacher's big, deep eyes always looked very sad, even when he laughed or smiled. It seemed to me like some kind of emotional pain was hidden in them. I really wanted to hug him at such moments. Rumor around the school had it that Mr. Pellegrini's fiancée had abandoned him right before the wedding. She had run away to California with some rich American guy, but he just used her and left. When this backstabbing traitor returned and fell on her knees before Mr. Pellegrini, he couldn't forgive her and take her back, even though he still loved her. Ugh! When I think about that wicked cheater, my brain starts to boil up. How can you leave a man like Mr. Pellegrini? If I was in her place, I would definitely be the most faithful, devoted, and loving bride. But the teacher didn't pay any attention to me at all. The thought that he needed neither my love nor my devotion made me weep bitterly into my pillow at night. In the classroom, when my eyes met Mr. Pellegrini's eyes, I was blushing and even stuttering a little if he asked me a question. And all the time I waited for him to address me with my heart aflutter. Can you imagine how much effort it took for me to gather all my will and answer the questions coherently, not to look like an idiot? I was so consumed by my feelings for Mr. Pellegrini that I didn't pay any attention to peers who liked me. There was one guy in our class named Matteo, and he was wacky. He stared at me with his puppy eyes all the time and gave me chocolates, and when he saw me, he was falling silent like a porcelain doll. It pissed me off, to be honest, although I didn't mind the chocolate. Believe me, such a wimp is not to be compared with the classy Mr. Pellegrini, who definitely knew how to treat the girls. Can somebody tell me why our peers are always so ridiculous and pathetic? Meanwhile, my classmate and my best friend Andrea began to notice that I was behaving strangely, not in the way I did before. And one day during lunch, she decided to talk to me frankly. Charlotte, tell me what it is, and don't try to evade the answer. I'll still get to the truth. I think you've fallen for our new cheesy English teacher, am I right? Each of her sharp phrases echoed inside me with emotional pain. I felt like a great wave of uncontrollable anger had overwhelmed me. How could Andrea be so casual, calling cheesy the teacher I worshipped? It's Mr. Pellegrini! I was about to suffocate from the emotions that overwhelmed me. The friend noticed my inadequate state, took my hand, and said, "Hey, baby, chill. I'm sorry if I was rude and hurt your feelings. Honey, you really fell in love if you're reacting so strongly to things," said my smart friend. Andrea's warm sympathy, her support, and understanding melted my heart and made me feel not alone. I cried and hugged her tightly. "Andrea, I'm so grateful for you, and I'm glad that someone else knows about my feelings now. It's so hard keeping it all inside and suffering, and it's a dead-end situation. Mr. Pellegrini is the love of my life. I know it. I don't need anyone else, but he doesn't even look at me. Without him, everything loses all meaning," I said sadly. My friend froze for a moment, thinking, and then said a very reasonable thing, which I will now briefly share. I won't be retelling our entire conversation in all those details. We chatted through the whole lunchtime, and we're even late for our next lesson. But Andrea's thought was that, judging by my feelings, Mr. Pellegrini and I were soulmates, and he loves me very much as well. But he's my teacher, so he couldn't openly talk about his feelings, because it would be against pedagogical ethics. According to Andrea's logic, I should take the initiative and confess my love first. "Charlotte, I've noticed Mr. Pellegrini looking at you piercingly. When you don't see it, like a hungry wolf that hasn't eaten for a couple of months looks at freshly roasted ham. I'm telling you, he has a crush on you too. I'm never wrong about these things." Andrea planted hope in my soul. The conversation with my friend cheered me up. I thought a lot about her words. They began to seem so logical and reasonable to me that after a couple of days, I believed in Mr. Pellegrini's feelings. Oh, what a sweet feeling it is. You probably know it if you're truly in love at least once in your life. How do I describe it? You're dizzy. Clouds of butterflies flutter in your stomach. You want to laugh and cry with happiness at the same time. And at the sight of your loved one, you get covered with a warm wave of bliss. Even Dad noticed that I'd changed and started to shine recently. In addition, I began to care about my appearance more, style my hair differently for school, and do my makeup every day. Don't you think I should match Mr. Pellegrini, always dressed to the point, so that he's ashamed of his future bride? And I had no doubt that I would become his bride. Meanwhile, Matteo, the fool with the puppy eyes, began to follow me around, giving me flowers and even asked me out on a date. Apparently, the changes in my looks blew the guy's mind and he got bolder. I confess that when he asked me out, I was amazed that he could speak at all. I think in that 1 minute, he said more words to me than he had in his entire life before. "Charlotte, I got a job at my father's firm, I do delivery on weekends, and now I have my own money to ask you out somewhere and spend more time together, and I really like you." Matteo barely uttered the last phrase, as if he was crushed by something heavy. He blushed and looked down. I chuckled loudly, and my eyebrows went up in disdain. "With you? On a date?" I asked arrogantly. And in this phrase, one could easily read the negative answer. Judging by the expression on Matteo's face, every word I said was a stab in the heart to him. He started blinking and he fell silent, but I didn't have time to wipe his tears. My thoughts were occupied by Mr. Pellegrini, and besides, I was in a hurry to visit Charlotte to once again discuss the plan of winning our teacher's heart. The next week, our class was going to Genoa for 2 days to go sightseeing and visit the Teatro Carlo Felice Opera House. The opera was in English, so Mr. Pellegrini accompanied us on the trip. "Charlotte, it's time to take the bull by the horns. You'll have a chance to be alone with your teacher and confess your feelings to him. You can't miss this chance, and you need to prepare well and fully ready for this important moment," my friend kept repeating. For some reason, she took out a set of revealing underwear from her closet, which made me go as red as a beet. "Andrea, no, I definitely don't plan on this," I protested, because I grew up in a very strict family, and I wasn't going to sacrifice my principles even for the person I loved. But my friend didn't listen to my objections and put the set into my purse, which already had a short skirt and revealing blouse with a seductive neckline in it. And so the day had come. I don't really remember the school bus in which our class traveled to Genoa, the classmates' chatter and the fast-changing view from the window, but everything was a blur. And when my eyes met Mr. Pellegrini's eyes, I was feeling a heat wave hit all over me. The same thing was happening in the theater, and if you ask me how I liked the opera, I'm not even talking about the plot. I won't even be able to remember the singers' faces. After the intense program, we arrived at the hotel late in the evening. Before I could catch my breath, Andrea, with whom we shared a room, pointed to her watch. She said it was time to act. My friend did my makeup, my hair, and helped me get dressed. I felt a little uncomfortable because I'd never worn such a short skirt before, and I was wearing such suggestive and provocative makeup for the first time in my life. "Baby, you're a jam. He won't be able to resist," Andrea said convincingly and reassuringly and patted me on the shoulder. My friend escorted me to Mr. Pellegrini's room, winked cheerfully, and left me alone at the front door. After a minute of heavy silence, I realized that there was nowhere to retreat, and I decisively knocked on the door, which swung open in a couple of seconds. Mr. Pellegrini was standing behind it in a bathrobe after the shower, beautiful like a Greek god. He looked at me in surprise and asked, "Charlotte, did something happen? You're so pale. Come in. Do you want some water?" There was no trace of my confidence left. I timidly entered the room and tried to gather my thoughts. My knees were trembling, and I breathed in more air and blurted out quickly, "Mr. Pellegrini, you're my soulmate. That's what Andrea says, and she's never wrong. I love you, and I know for sure that it's forever. I'll never cheat on you like your fiancé did, who left you and fled to the States with some chancer. She's not worthy of you, and I'm faithful and loyal." At that moment, Mr. Pellegrini began to laugh nervously and clumsily cover his laughter with coughing. His unexpected reaction made me even paler, and I felt a lump in my throat. "Oh, Charlotte, I respect your feelings, and I appreciate that such an extraordinary girl like you noticed me and sincerely confessed her feelings. I don't have a fiancé. I've been married for a long time now. My wife is really in the States now. She's getting her PhD. She's coming back next month. And you," he couldn't finish, because I flew out of the room like a bullet. I was trembling with shame and disappointment. Andrea had to give me a sedative pill. Everything that happened seemed like the worst nightmare to me. My broken heart hurt so much that the way back to Portofino left no mark in my memory. And at home, I turned out to have a fever, and my parents had to call a doctor. I was in bed for over 2 weeks, and according to the doctor, my illness was of an emotional nature. He advised my parents to send me to therapy, and with the help of a specialist, I gradually began to recover. When I returned to school, shocking news awaited me. On that ill-fated evening in Genoa, one of my classmates saw me running out of Mr. Pellegrini's room in a short skirt and told the whole school about it. My rejected admirer Matteo got so jealous that he attacked the English teacher, scratched his face, and broke his glasses. And after that, the principal conducted an internal investigation and fired my crush. I also stopped talking to Andrea. Not because I blamed her for what had happened after all. I'm the one responsible for my actions. But just looking at her reminded me of this sad story. Yes, evil tongues kept saying God knows what about me, but for some reason I didn't care. Until I was surprised to find out that Matteo was shutting up their dirty mouths and even got into a fight with someone because of me. When I asked why he was doing this, my admirer just said, "Charlotte, don't you get it by now? I really love you, and I'm ready to wait for you as long as it takes." Those words warmed my heart, and for the first time I actually paid attention to this guy. His loving eyes were saying that a new happy streak was coming into my life.